Hello, and welcome to Soul Aligned CEO Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Mori, and on today's episode, I have a solo episode for you, and it is about a topic that has been a part of my life for almost 20 years now, and that is manifestation. So, welcome. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You know everything about manifestation. You've read some books, you've watched some videos. You are in the process of creating what you want in your life, which is fair. But let me ask you this. Do you really have everything that you want in your life? And are you really consistently creating? And if maybe you'd like some insight into that, I welcome you to listen to this episode today. So, I want to start first by talking about what is manifestation, because I think a lot of us maybe got our first experience with the terminology about manifestation with the very popular book, The Secret, that came out, I think, around 2005, 2006. Now, myself included, I jumped on the secret bandwagon. I was absolutely mesmerized by this concept of manifestation and also this concept of there's a secret about it. Now, here's the truth that I've discovered many years later is I was always creating and I was always manifesting long before I even realized that there was a terminology for it. And you guys were also. I had experienced in my life this inner knowing of I could think about something that I really desired and that I really wanted in my life. And then I just had a continual thought process and feeling about it, and then it would occur. Now, I didn't know that that was manifestation or creation. I just knew that things that I truly believed in had a funny way of just coming true. Now, when I stumbled upon The Secret, really that gave me the tools and kind of an official formulation of, okay, there is this concept of energy and putting things out there into the universe and it's being returned to me. And so The Secret, I think, really started this craze of creating things. A lot of times people were creating these dream boards and manifesting, certain, objects, cars and houses and boats and vacations and, all of these types of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what I'd like to share with you guys today is a few of my own secrets and really how I have thought about manifestation over the last 2 decades. So, one of the first things that I want to start with is this concept of manifestation is this grand task, kind of how it was alluded to back then, where, you sit down and you create your vision board and you kind of have this exercise of manifestation, and then you hang that board somewhere and you're walking by it every day. And, it's this grand gesture of manifestation, which, is definitely doable. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I have come to realize is that manifestation is really something much more innate and much more simple. And it's really as commonplace as breathing. And what I mean by that is, from the concept of putting that energy out there, really manifestation at its core is the fundamentally like what you are thinking. What you are thinking consciously and subconsciously is playing on a loop and creating this whole hologram that you exist in. And while the grand gesture of creating the dream board and setting up your goals and having the vision, especially around the new year, that's fantastic to kind of kickstart you and get you started. But what I'm going to share with you today, it's not a grand gesture. It's an everyday activity and it's a routine, and it's really a mindset and a way of thinking and being that you put into practice no different than you would an exercise regimen or a meditation practice or how you plan to be eating. So, manifestation is really a daily practice that really involves your mental, emotional, and spiritual beings. All of that energy coming together and being aligned with the thoughts and the energy and the messages that you're thinking. So, before I go any further, I do really want to recognize someone that has been very impactful to me along my entire journey, and that's Dr. Wayne Dyer. Soon after I stumbled upon The Secret, I also came across my first book that I ever read of Dr. Wayne Dyer's, and that's Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It's a little bit different than what you think it might be. Dr. Dyer goes through all of the verses of the Tao Te Ching, and he translates them into a 21st century perspective with really the core messaging throughout all of these passages being your thoughts and how what you're thinking on a day-to-day basis really creates your reality. And so his teachings are really what prompted and what spun my success in creating everything that I wanted in my life. And so I just really want to acknowledge and really express my gratitude for his work. But definitely check out his book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, if you haven't already. All right, so let's talk about manifestation from a standpoint of what is it, that people are creating. And so I think a lot of us think about manifestation and think about like what we want to create, and it relates to our passions, right? And a lot of times, especially since many of us are entrepreneurs, what we want to create is some sort of business or offering or what we want to put out there in the world. And so that's a very common place to start. And that's actually where I started on my manifestation journey, is creating the business that I now have today over 15 years later. It was through deep, deep manifestation and creation and, a lot of hard work. I'm not going to make it seem like there's not effort involved, but my first true experience with creation and manifestation really came to fruition through my business that I created in 2008. And so, in addition to businesses or career paths, other things that people tend to want to manifest into their lives, the next biggest bucket is probably relationships. What types of romantic relationships do you want to have in your life? What type of friendships and other partnerships? I think that's key. People are always visualizing the type of partner that they want to be with, and then, you happen to run into someone somewhere. That's not a mistake. That's very intentional. And then, you can manifest things such as where you live, the location, the physical structure or house. This is also a category that has been very prominent in my life. I am always very, very specific about where I'm living, the type of house I'm living, the location, the surroundings. And this is by far the element in my life that I'm able to manifest very easily. And I'll talk a little bit about why things might come more easily than others as we kind of talk through the process. Other things that people might want to manifest, certain adventures, certain travels, experiences, other material things. You really are creating always, and you're creating everything that you have. And so let's think about that for a second. Let's just pause and kind of take an inventory of where you're at in your life. What are you experiencing right now? What type of career path or business are you in? What types of relationships do you have? Where do you live? Where do you experience things? What types of adventures do you go on? All of these things are a direct result of you creating. Whether you sat down with your dream board or your journal and intentionally mapped out that these are the things that you want, everything that you have in your life is a direct relation to what you have been creating. Okay. And so I want you to think about that as we kind of go through this discussion, because I think one thing that the mainstream concepts about manifestation maybe didn't cover thoroughly is the fact that you are always manifesting. And whether you're manifesting what you want or what you don't want is your choice. And so let's kind of take this example of wanting to have a business, and I'll walk you through the steps that I go through, because the energy that you're putting out there about this business, you don't have time. You don't know what you're doing. You don't have the energy. You don't have the money. You don't have. It's not what you want, right? But it's what you're constantly thinking about. And everything out in the universe, whether you think about it as like guides and angels and source and all of this like quantum physics, which I'm not going to get into, but all of the energy is then like, oh, okay. So this girl is thinking, you don't have this, she doesn't have this, she doesn't have the time, she doesn't have the energy. That's what she's thinking. And wow, that's what she has. So we're done, great job to us. She's thinking about all the stuff that she doesn't have. And so she doesn't have it. And so that's what she wants. So that's the part that's a little bit tricky, is you have to be very, very mindful and very aware of, are you always thinking about what you want, or are you thinking about what you don't want? All right. So let's dive in. So, as I was thinking about this episode, when it first came to me, the idea to talk about manifestation, at first I was like, okay, what do I really do? Because it's hard to list it out in a tactile approach of steps, kind of like The Secret. It had its methodology, and it had the steps that you go through to manifest. And myself, over the years, kind of trial and error, and really being conscious of my energy and my thoughts always, I do have this routine, and it's a daily part of my life. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm human, so there are days or weeks where I slack off, or I mess up, or I lose my focus. And let me tell you, very quickly does the universe adjust and kind of reframe my hologram to what I'm focusing on. And so then I become very tuned into, all right, I need to stop thinking about what I don't want, and I need to be thinking about what I do want. So now these steps that I'm going to share with you, I don't want you to get kind of so overwhelmed into the specifics, because this is just, I'm laying this out so that there are kind of step by step, because we're human and we kind of think about things logically. Now, a lot of the times, all of these steps are kind of somewhat occurring simultaneously, especially the middle three. And so there's 5 steps in all, and kind of just bear with me here, because I think as I go through them, you'll understand how they build on each other, and they're all kind of always occurring. Now, when should you be manifesting? So, my answer to that is always be conscious of what you are thinking and what you are putting out there into the universe. That's my short answer. Now, the reasonable answer, because I know we are all busy and we're all doing different things, is you need to at least start where there's a certain time of the day where you're dedicating mental and spiritual focus to this energy. And so, whether you are a morning manifester or an evening manifester, it doesn't really matter. But you need to decide what works for you. And what works for me is at night. That's when I really like to think about and kind of do an inventory of where am I in life today? What do I really, really love? What do I wish could be a little bit different? What do I want to call in new? And so I think about that, on a daily basis. I really do. And then I make adjustments to what I'm thinking about. I take note of if I'm putting out any energy that I don't want out into the universe. And I really kind of go through these steps. So let's talk about it. So, these 5 steps. So, the first one is one that I don't think many kind of traditional teachers and methodology about manifestation kind of talk about. And to me, it's really important to start here. So, the first step when I think about it is accepting where you are. So, step number one is accepting where you are and accepting it in a neutral way. And so, really, the point of this first step is to eliminate the negative self talk and that energy that you're putting out there that you don't have this, you don't have that. And then that's the universe saying, oh, okay, this is what she's thinking about all the time. She doesn't have all this stuff. So, perfect. No. And so by accepting where you're at, I'm not trying to tell you to like fake it or like pretend that you're like overjoyed with where you're at. What I'm asking you to do in this first step is to accept where you're at. And so let's kind of talk about this process with the example of wanting to start a business. And so if you want to start a business and you don't have a business yet, that's where you're at. From a neutral standpoint, you don't have a business right now. You want a business, and that's it. Like, you don't have to go into all the stories and all the reasons and all of that negative energy that actually then gets like thrown back at you and is creating this experience that you don't want. So accept where you're at. You don't have a business. You want to start a business. You have an idea to start a business. You have a passion to start a business. Whatever it is, accept where you're at in the most neutral way possible. So now that you've accepted where you're starting, the next step is key. And this really is the meat and potatoes of this whole entire process. It's really identifying, what do you want? Now, that may seem obvious, right? You're creating, you're manifesting. Of course, you're going to create what you want. But see, here's the part where people get tripped up, is that they think about it from the standpoint of, I want to create a business. Okay. That's pretty general. And I'll tell you this, what I have learned from my experience over the last 20 years is the more specific that you can be about what you want, the more likely that you will get exactly that. So I'll give you an example with my business. And so 20 years ago, when I first started to have, this understanding of manifestation, and I was at a point in my professional career where I really wanted to have my own business. And I knew that I wanted to be in the corporate space. I knew that I wanted to be consulting. I knew that I wanted to share my experience and know-how from an educational standpoint and really teach and help organizations transition into new processes that would be occurring when they purchase new software. And so that was very, very specific. My business wasn't just, I want to be a consultant. Sure, that's a dream and that's, kind of a very general way to look at it. But what I was creating was very, very specific. I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew exactly what I would be doing. I knew exactly who the clients would be. I had it all kind of in my mind and almost like drawn out, and was very specific about it. So I highly suggest, as you're thinking about your business, to get as specific about what you want for anything that you're creating. Now, there's kind of a part two of this second step, and that's once you know what you want, how are you going to be about it? Just think about that for a second. Once you know what you want, so you want to create this very specific business, how are you going to be about it? And specifically, how are you going to feel? Because here's where I think people get a little bit tripped up with manifestation is it's not so much like what you're thinking about in your mind, it's what you're feeling in your heart. Drop into that for a second. So if you're thinking about, I want to create a business, and you're very, very specific about it and you know all the details, that's fantastic. But what's your knowing in your heart about this business that you want to create? How are you going to be about it? So, what do I mean by that? How are you going to be? So, put yourself in the position of you have that business now. You have the success, you have the clients, you have the income, you have the experiences, you have all of that now. How does that make you feel? Do you feel excited? Do you feel grateful? Do you feel full of joy? Do you feel inspired? Here's the real secret. How are you going to feel when you have what you want? Be those feelings now. Be those feelings now. Nothing's stopping you. You're choosing. So feel that excitement for a second of, whatever it is that your business is, and you are experiencing that. Wow. Like, what does that feel like? I can tell you this is how I exactly manifested my business 15 years ago. I thought about myself every day, like going into these large corporations and had a podium on a stage and I was giving a lecture or teaching a course. I felt that and I could see it so clearly. And so I thought about that every day and I visualized that. And I let those feelings from that experience stay with me. Those feelings are very real. Even though those types of activities might not necessarily be occurring that afternoon, there's no reason that those feelings can't be. Does that make sense? So, you know what you want. How are you going to be about what you want? Feel those feelings now. So that's step number 2. So that's a big one. So step number 3. Now, this is where we do need to get a little bit action oriented, right? Because you can't just think about this fantastic business that you want to create every single day and experience those feelings and then you lay around in bed all day. Like it doesn't work like that. You need to like physically be in action, but be in action with those feelings from step number 2. Let that energy drive you into whatever human actions that you're pursuing in that day. And so whether you're brainstorming a marketing plan or you're setting up a budget, whatever you're doing, proceed through those tasks with the energy of how you are being when you're already in that space of having this successful business that you're working towards. So, being in that energy, you'll realize that you're going to get a lot more done. Because isn't that energy a lot more inspiring than waking up every day and thinking about you don't have this and you don't have that and you don't have the time and you don't have the money, and then you're kind of like beating yourself down? And it ebbs and flows, and this is a practice. But if you can like close your eyes, and I can still remember because I had nothing when I was first starting my business. I mean, I was really going out on a limb on an idea that people thought I was crazy. This didn't exist when I was pursuing it, but I could see myself doing it and I could see myself having those interactions. And it makes me emotional to this day because it wasn't that I was faking it. I could really feel it. And whatever you believe from a quantum perspective, if everything is occurring all at once and you're calling that energy in, and those feelings that you're feeling, you're bringing into this now moment. But that really inspires a very different type of action in step 3. And so being in that space of the physical things that you have to do, if you're going to create a business, you need to get on the phone, you need to get on the computer, you need to make some signs, you need to do marketing things, whatever you're selling and creating, you physically still have to do things, right? You're not going to be able to just take a nap and all of a sudden your business appears. So, step 3 is all about taking that inspired action and really letting yourself be led by those feelings of how you're being. So, you're going to be, and then you're going to do. And then step 4 is that you're going to have. Now, the thing about step 4 is it seems logical, right? So I'm going to be a certain way and I'm going to do certain things and then I'm going to have this result. So there's 2 things about this step that I really want to make sure that everybody understands is that to actually physically have the result of what you want, what you're creating, how you're being about it, how you are taking action to pursue it, to have that actually physically appear in your physical hologram, you have to accept it. And this is by far where I see most people getting tripped up because you can get yourself into that mental space of doubting again and really like making it so that you're not worthy and you self sabotage in this step. I'll be honest, like I've done it myself, especially when it comes to wanting to create romantic relationships. Like this is where I self sabotage, and I know it. It's like when it is so close to happening and I can feel it actually being in my space, I will do something to not receive it. And so then I don't have it. Step number 4 is very mental and it's very emotional and it's very spiritual. You have to allow yourself to have it. And then this is the step where it's like it's actually occurring. You have your business and it's not going to start out maybe day 1 making $10,000 or $100,000, but here's the thing, there's a time element to this that I think as a human we kind of get caught up in, and we're thinking about a certain time and we have goals that are often related to time. And when I am kind of coaching people and talking to them about manifestation, I actually tell them to not have any timeline whatsoever because our timelines are a little bit ridiculous when it comes to like the grand scheme of the universe and energy, because it's going to go one or two ways. You're either going to unrealistically want something immediately, or you're going to do the exact opposite and kind of push something so far out, then it would happen a lot sooner if you would just let it be. And so I often tell people, like, don't get so caught up on the when of having it. Like, do the work, do the actual process of creation and manifestation on a daily basis, being in that energy, really thinking about what you want, feeling those feelings now, doing the inspired action, and then opening yourself up to receive it. And maybe it does happen much more quickly than you ever could have imagined, or maybe it takes a little bit more time, because you don't know the series of events that you're putting into motion by changing the trajectory of your energy. You don't know who you're going to come in contact with, that then it just becomes a snowball. So there is an element of patience from a human perspective. But I will tell you this, like, the more you can detach from, okay, this needs to happen at a certain time. Like, I have to have my business up and going by fourth quarter. I need to be in this relationship by my birthday, by Valentine's Day. Like, the more that you set like arbitrary like deadlines to things, the more the universe is like, okay. Like, the series of events and energy, maybe you could have it sooner, and then you're pushing it out to some kind of arbitrary time. So detach yourself from that time element and let yourself actually receive and have. Don't self sabotage at this very almost last step. So you've created it, you've gone through the first four steps, you have it. Like, continue to feel that energy. This is where, you don't taper off. You don't like sit back and be like, okay, I created this, I have my business, okay, I'm done. No, this is where you like amp that up even more. And the final step, from my perspective, in this whole process is the gratitude. Like, you actually have it. You've created this magnificent business, or you've called in this beautiful relationship, or you've created this space that you're going to be moving into, or this adventure of your life that you've always wanted. It's occurring. You did it. You have it. Express that gratitude for it, because that gratitude is like the perpetual, like, then it's going in a circle and continuing to come back to you. And so to this day, I express gratitude on a daily basis for what I created and started over 15 years ago. And I keep that energy moving forward, and I just add to it, all of the other things that I've created and that I've experienced and that I'm so very grateful for. So, expressing that gratitude and staying in that energy of your creation is the fifth step that I kind of go through. So, again, I know these five steps, as I'm talking through them, are very, very separate, but a lot of them actually occur simultaneously. And so definitely go back and kind of listen to the episode again. Step one is accepting where you're at as neutral as possible. Step two is really being very clear about what you want. And then how are you going to be and feel about what you want? Step three is taking that inspired action based on that energy of how you're feeling and being. Step four is actually allowing yourself to receive and have. And step five is continuing that energy and having gratitude. So I hope that this discussion was helpful. This is really the tip of the iceberg as far as kind of how I really look at manifestation. It really changed my life completely to understand this. And it is a very daily mental, spiritual, emotional practice that you have to dedicate yourself to. And here's the great thing is um it really builds the more that you dedicate to it. And it's not so much dedicating a certain amount of time, it's just having that consistency, right? Like anything else, it's if you're doing sit ups every single day or you're jogging every single day, even just a little bit, that builds. And so decide, when you want to kind of do your manifestation thinking, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, and then just give yourself a few minutes every day to really think about these steps and this process that I've shared. And I'd love to know what you think, if this has been helpful, if you put it into action. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I really appreciate your support of the podcast. It means the world to me to be able to share these conversations and to hopefully add some insight and inspiration into your lives. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. Until next time, I wish you much peace, love, and joy as you pursue being soul aligned.